back to Women Making Moves, where we celebrate the moves that women are making. My name is Amy Pons. I'm founder of Unlock the Magic, coaching, marketing, and energy healing. I'm joined today with Emily Brown. Emily is a leader who seamlessly blends technological innovation with a deep curiosity for the human experience. As the COO of Collage App and I Spy Solar, Emily is revolutionizing homeschool education while championing renewable energy solutions across the UK. Emily's journey began in the U.S. Navy, where she served as a yeoman, family ombudsman, and sexual assault victims advocate. Through supporting service members and their families during their most vulnerable moments, she developed a leadership style grounded in empathy, dignity, and a relentless drive for meaningful progress. Emily holds a bachelor's degree in humanities from the University of Maryland Global Campus and is completing her master's in liberal studies at Rutgers University, focusing on philosophy and religion. With only her capstone remaining, Emily's academic journey reflects her lifelong fascination with understanding how people live, learn, and make meaning in our rapidly changing world. Through her consultancy, Nanchi Nexus, Emily helps organizations navigate the critical intersection of technology and social responsibility. Whether developing ethical AI frameworks or advancing renewable energy initiatives, she brings justice, innovation, and compassion to every endeavor. Beyond her professional work, Emily is a dedicated homeschooler, artist, and nature enthusiast. Pursuits that continually inspire her mission to build a more connected, compassionate, and sustainable world. We explore Emily's story today, a journey of resilience, perpetual learning, and an enduring commitment to human flourishing in our digital age. Emily, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Ooh, your bio just lights me up.
Thank you.
I feel like in so many ways I'm 2 years old in this plane. Because the first 40 years of my life, I was only taught and felt safe and familiar and comfortable with the copy-paste notion of how to do life. So I find it refreshing and beautiful and exquisite to talk to humans like you that understand that the whole goal here in the human experience is to be the youest you that you can be and take care of each other, the earth, nature. Like nature is the ultimate playbook. When did we forget that?
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's become such a consumerist world. It's become such a how to get ahead, how to be ahead kind of world that I find that very, like you said, you left the corporate world, and I've listened to quite a few of your episodes, and I've been following you for a while, and I agree with you completely. I think that there is this expectation of us, and I'm neurodivergent. I have ADHD and OCD. And I've always felt like an imposter because I felt like I didn't actually fit into any of those boxes that I was expected to be in. And I spent a lot of time just thinking to myself, like, I can fake this and I can do this, but I'm never going to be happy and I'm never going to enjoy what I'm doing. And so, yeah, I really wish we could get back to a place where we were more connected with nature, more connected with who we are as a people, and like the pursuit of a true happiness, not a pursuit of a happiness that's been defined for us by other people.
Right, which is you're in the UK, I'm in the US. You know, I've been feeling called the past month to publish. You'll see this out on LinkedIn. Like every day I post a few milestones along Women's History Timeline in the US specifically. And so like less than 100 years ago, we were proving that we were a people, meaning women.
Yes.
And in the US, we say like, oh, great. Starting this year, all women had all rights. No, but like white women had some
Exactly.
rights.
Absolutely.
It was never all
White straight women. White straight
You're
women.
right. White, straight, able-bodied, cis-het white women. And I love your philosophy and religion. I consider myself an amateur in that, but that's like how I vibe and move these days. Anything mainstream, I kind of unsubscribe from because it's like I want to unlearn all of that to figure out, okay, who is Amy before she got here? Or like, what does that even mean? If you look back in history, we keep doing this.
Yeah.
Meaning like we've been here at this space and time before, and now we keep reinventing the wheel. And again, nature is the ultimate playbook. But I find, and the biggest reason I unsubscribed from corporate America paired with a workplace psychological abuse experience, I got to a place where I don't subscribe to the systems that are still in place, rooted in white supremacy, patriarchy, colonialism, capitalism. I don't subscribe to that. And I do understand that in order to be able to survive in day-to-day in these systems,
Hmm.
I get to meet myself where I'm at and say, like, okay, what feels good for me today? Meaning, I was in hardcore patriarchal corporate marketing for 20 years. So, like, I know what the system expects of me as a business owner now, and
Hmm.
I get to choose when I show up or how I show up in those expected places. So, I'm still honoring myself, my unique soul essence. And I really follow the threads and the breadcrumbs that the universe is laying before me. That's the how.
Yeah.
So, anything that land for you there?
All of it landed. Yeah, I actually was the same. I was working for a company that I loved. I loved my boss. I loved what I did, but I was working ridiculous hours and I have children and I homeschool and I live in a different country and I like to travel and I like to be out in nature. And I found myself perpetually exhausted, perpetually frustrated, snappy, and just if I could sleep, I couldn't sleep because I was thinking about things that I didn't get done. And I kind of stepped back and said, I can't do this. I'm not this person. I think not just because of something that's wrong with me. I mean, yes, there would be an explanation for maybe I just can't hack it, but I think that nobody can hack it. I don't know a single person in the corporate world right now. I don't know a single person. I have so many friends. I have so many, acquaintances. I have so many connections that just say to me, like, I'm struggling. I'm struggling emotionally. I'm struggling financially. I'm struggling spiritually. And I am not a religious person, but I'm a spiritual person. And I feel like we have this desire in us for something bigger, but we are so, it's almost, the pane and circum, the bread and circus of it all. They keep us so confused and so busy and so striving for what suits them. And by them, I mean the billionaires, the few white people that have control of the world kind of thing. And we spend our lives just struggling and then we die. And I'm like, there's got to be more. Like, I can't do this. This isn't fair.
That's exactly why I felt safe and familiar in the corporate workplace because I was brought up to get a job, get paid. It was the copy paste. It was the cookie.
Hmm.
This is the only way you do life. And again, I like to understand and go back. What was the origin? I don't like to just sit and complain and dwell and blame.
I would like to interrupt, by the way, and say I apologize, but I don't think that acknowledging pain and acknowledging situations is complaining. And I think that this comes from a very patriarchal and a very Christianity based idea that if you call attention to something that is just absolutely fundamentally wrong, that you're being frustrating or that you're complaining or that you're whining. It's kind of like the idea of lazy. People will tell me, oh, there's this concept of lazy. I don't believe in the concept of lazy. And I could cite many resources for that. So I would just like to say, I don't think that you're ever complaining if you're sitting pondering how we can change the world, because nobody changed the world by not thinking about what's wrong with it.
No, the only reason I say that is because when I look back in my own family lineage, there was such scarcity, lack, fear when there like literally wasn't enough food on
Mm,
the table during the Depression. And
yes.
I understand where it's coming from. It's both not justifying it. I just want to understand how we got here. So like, for instance, my grandparents were raised through the Depression where there was nothing.
Mm,
And I grew up in domestic violence home. And so like there's literal hypervigilance and survival like at all times.
same.
And so
Absolutely. That comfort in that chaos, right?
there's a comfort.
That
And so
feeling of like, if everything's calm, I'm sitting going, oh,
it's
this
like,
is a
oh
little
shit.
too
Yeah.
calm.
So
Something's got to change.
I knew how to understand and navigate that. That's why corporate America felt so safe and familiar for me because I just
Hmm.
needed to feel, honestly, no one around me was safe or secure. That felt safe and normal for me. So I was like,
Absolutely.
cool. So I just kept going until, and this is something where I feel, especially within women, we're starting to prepare for a major life shift starting at 35, 40, when our body is literally about to catapult us into a different timeline, whether we want it or not. It's
Hmm.
coming. And so around 35, I was like, whoa, oh, okay. My guides, the universe started ringing my doorbell and saying, what do you want to do? Because it's not this. You're supposed to be on the front lines guiding humanity into the next phase of humaning, basically, returning home to themselves, but also within community. Like returning home to what you feel and think while not relying on anyone outside of you to reaffirm that, yet you build the community space to move the collective forward. Anyway, so that's kind of the doorbell ring I started to get around 35. And I was like, oh, I'm in the middle of like thick in climbing the corporate ladder. What does this even mean? And so what felt good for me was to lead the women's employee resource group, which started to feel really good because I was coaching hundreds of women to be like, who are you before anybody else says anything or does anything?
Yeah.
Like, what is that? And then I started numbing with alcohol because I didn't want to feel any of the feelings I was feeling. I just wanted to like do the job, get the paycheck, get more titles, etc. Until I could turn 40 and it was like I had no choice. I did have choice. We always have full autonomy and free will. And it was like
You knew something had to change.
you're not supposed to be here, meaning
Yeah.
like, and my big awakening came when I visited Salem, Massachusetts in October, and where there's a vortex of energy and the veil is thin. And I was like, oh, I'm extremely in tune with spirit, with nature, with energy and force that we cannot see, touch, feel in the general sense. And then again, paired with that workplace psychological abuse experience, it finally gave me the pathway or the permission to say today's my last day. Not everyone can do that. I
Congratulations, by the way.
thank
That's
you.
amazing. Like
Thank you.
that should be celebrated. You should celebrate that.
I do now. At the
Yeah.
time it was like, oh,
Terrifying. Yeah. Like, oh God, what am I doing? Yeah. I'm
like
like, oh no.
we're doing this. But I'm so proud to say that 2 years later, my ascension coach and teacher doesn't like when I say this, but like I'm a baby witch. She was like, "No, you're just remembering who you are." But I say that because like it's going to be lifelong, you know. And now I'm beautifully on this path to usher in others to feel into what might be ringing their doorbell as well. So back to you. I already get the sense that you're extremely ascended, and that's an awesome feeling to be reconnected with someone that is kindred in that way. How do you feel? For me, again, my clairsentience, my claircognizance was felt in me like as a 3, 4 year old, and then get stopped the moment I entered mainstream school. I'm sensing that you have something around that as it relates to why you homeschool and why you're revolutionizing that. You could talk more.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. So I was always that kid. I was always that kid that was very emotional, that was
Mm.
very in touch, I called myself an empath, which I was told I was an empath, and I didn't really even know what that meant. I didn't realize that it meant that I had a connection to people that other people didn't really experience. And I always found it weird because I was like, why am I able to do this, but other people aren't? Why am I able to think about this in a way that other people aren't? It's really funny because I have always been the person that when people meet me, they're like, I've known you. I've known you in a previous life, or I've known you like before, or I've known you, like I've known people like you that I adore. I actually have had really weird scenarios that kind of opened me up to who I am as a person. And I would be walking through the airport and I would have someone just walk up to me and say, I'm having the worst day of my life. Can I just have a hug? And I'd be like, yeah, I don't even know this person. Like, and my husband, he's like, who is this person? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know. And I would hug them and they would cry, or we would sit and they would talk. And then we would go through these moments of profound kindness, of just me being kind to them and them being kind to me in a way that opened their hearts up to me. And sometimes we stay in touch, sometimes we don't. But if it happened once or maybe twice, I would think that it was, a fluke. But it happens all the time. People just meet me and they'll be like, I need to hug you. I need to be around you. And I don't know why. And I don't think I'm even that special. I think it's that I reflect kindness to them that they aren't willing to give to themselves, because I'm a lot kinder to people because I feel like the world is devoid of kindness in a way that is regrettable. And so I try to be open and I try to learn. And I actually, ironically, I grew up in a home similar to yours. I was actually a survivor of sexual abuse. And I also was a Republican for a really long time, believe it or not. If I met the me today that I was 20 years ago, I probably wouldn't even recognize that person. And I grew up in that space of, I always found it weird because I was also Catholic. I was raised Catholic, and I was in the South, which was weird. Grew up in Georgia. And I would be told at church and I'd be told in my family to be compassionate, to be kind, to be loving. I would quote the Beatitudes, and I would open my heart to people. But then I saw that that wasn't reflected in the religious or the political spectrum that I ran in. And I was very immature. I didn't understand how to fight the feelings that I was having of like, this isn't right. And so then I decided, you know what, actually, I'm going to get educated. And I joined the Navy. And the Navy actually really propelled me because although the Navy was in and of itself another very difficult, very right wing, very patriarchal, and being a woman in the military was very difficult, I found myself saying, no, I don't want this. And I don't want to be a part of this. And I got my bachelor's. And I studied humanities. I studied anthropology quite deeply. And I started to study cultures that were connected to nature, cultures that were connected to their ancestors, cultures that were connected to each other. We have a very individualistic society in America. And I was always drawn to cultures that were collectivist and that were, for the good of everybody. I remember being told when I was a kid, oh, colleges are liberal making machines. And they are, because you learn empathy and you learn education and you learn facts that confront who you are as a person. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. If anything, it has made me a champion for education, because it wasn't until I had this conversation with someone, actually randomly, somebody posted about, it was an African American woman, and she said, those of you who voted for Kamala, why did you vote for Kamala, and what made you change your mind? Like, why are you not like the other white people, like the white people in the audience? And she's like, I'm not trying to offend you, but I'm just curious. And I said, when I was younger, I grew up in this society where I knew that white women tears would get me whatever I wanted. And I hated it because it was supposed to be this empowering thing. Like I could cry and I could get my way, but it was demeaning in that I had to assert my presumed weakness to get what I needed to get done. But also I was perpetuating it because I was keeping in mind I was racist, I was sexist. I found that the white women around me were the worst at perpetuating it. It's the Aunt Lydias and the Serena Joys. The call is coming from inside the house. All the things you want to say that we've all said before. I knew what my role was, and I was struggling to stay in that role, but I was doing it. And I wasn't happy and I wasn't enjoying it. And then when I did get the chance to move ahead and say, actually, I'm going to get some education and I'm going to unlearn these things. I liken it to the patriarchy has put this chessboard in front of us, right? And they've put it on the table and they've stood there and they're like, hey, get on this chessboard and do your job and be where you're supposed to be. And they're shouting and they're screaming. And we're like, no, I don't want to do that. And there are still people in their spot. And I was one of those people, back in the day. And it's very difficult to reach those people. And the only way to really reach them is to educate them. And you have to do it in a way that is compassionate. No one got to me. Actually, I had a phone conversation with a friend of mine who I'd been in the military with, and she was just asking me questions. She was like, what about this? What about that? And she's like, Emily, I always thought you were smart. And it disappoints me that you're so uneducated on these things. And I was so angry at the time because I was still very deep in the sauce. I was in Florida. I was volunteering on the John McCain campaign because he was a military veteran. And I was obsessed with that idea that we needed this strong patriarchal leader. And then I just started to think like, actually, she's right. I was smart and I am smart. And why am I believing these things that are antithetical to the compassion that I feel for humans? The goal that I have of making the world a better place. And so in my mind, our need right now for kind education that is done not with shame or with an attack on who they are, because there are studies that have been done that have proven that if you come at somebody and you give them information that contradicts who they are or what they believe, they're going to take it as a physical attack, just as much as a physical attack as it is, an emotional attack. But if you ask people questions, right? And if you say, well, why do you believe that? And you kind of lead them into this thought process of, hey, I'm curious why you would have that thought. That seems antithetical to the things you told me that you believe. And I'm curious how you justify that in your mind. You don't have to yell at somebody to get them to change their mind. You just have to get them to start thinking.
I think it's beautiful that we both reflect back on our own path. I think that every experience led to the next. And for me, what that looked like is I used to be that ragey white feminist. And I say white feminist because, again, I wasn't necessarily aware of how intersectional. I was like, how unfair is it for me as a white woman in the corporate workplace, et cetera, this and that. And I now refer to myself as a womanist because I'm always going to be looking at how everything is impacting all women. Like I was saying in this campaign that I'm launching every day on LinkedIn about this timeline of how we've gotten here. And actually, I was one of the ones that was going after, even months ago, I was going after white women in the US. Don't you dare put this person in power again. That energy didn't feel good as
But it comes from desperation because we're
I
desperate.
was
We want
just,
so badly. We're like, how do you not
I'm like,
see what
don't you
you are?
dare. Well,
Yeah,
so now, again, as an energy coach, I know what I put out, I get back. So imagine what I was getting back when I was saying those types of things out in the open. It's not that it made it any less true. It's more about the fact that like, hey, now with this energy that I'm putting forth now in the timeline of like when the federal government in the 1900s made these rules and laws on paper, women could do things. And it was really talking about only white women, knowing that
absolutely.
Native American women could vote not until 1924, Asian Americans not till the 50s, Black women not till 1965. Those are the kinds of things I'm trying to educate. So it's not just about like making white women wrong. It's that, hey, did you know that
Absolutely.
likely to this point, even when quote unquote women were allowed to do things, it was commonly known outside of paper. Like in practice, it was white women.
I think about that too when the election was over. And you and I actually were supposed to talk, and then we were like, you know what?
I'm
Let's
like,
talk
Emily,
another
I
day.
have no capacity today, Emily. I'm
I
like,
had no capacity to.
I can't get
I
out of
didn't want to
bed.
cancel, but I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going
Well,
to function? And to go into your point of the intersectionality of it, I thought to myself as I'm laying in bed and I'm crying, and I'm not crying, I think we get made fun of a lot for crying about things. And I think that crying is also one of those things that's much maligned, but humans should cry more because I think that we should just release those emotions. But as I'm crying because I'm thinking about my children, I'm thinking about myself. I'm a queer person. I have a queer child, a trans child. I homeschool. There are so many ways that who I am and what my experience in the world is. I mean, I have ADHD and I take Adderall every day. And Robert Kennedy, RFK, he's literally said that he's going to put people on Adderall in camps, and I'm like, oh yeah, well, that's great. I'm going to go to camp. So I sat and I was so angry and I was like, how could they do this to us? And then I thought, it's such a place of privilege to be surprised that this happened. And I wasn't honestly surprised. I actually had said for weeks before, he's going to win. I don't know how he's going to win, but he's going to win. I could just feel it. And I think the your body, our choice vibe of things kind of opens up that what we are fighting against and what we are feeling. And I thought I am so incredibly privileged as a white woman, even though I am queer, even though I am in a place of intersectional traits of my life. I was extremely privileged to sit and go, oh gosh, this is going to affect me so hard. When there are African American women, there are, Native American women, there are people with disabilities that have literally been doing this for so long. And every single election has felt like this to them. And it's so easy to get lost in the hopelessness of it and to think, I am just so heartbroken and I am just so upset. And then think, you know what? I have to fight more. I have to work harder. I have to mobilize. I can lick my wounds and I can be sad, but then I have to make a plan.
we're all coming together, and that's what's starting to happen now is we're mobilizing, we're actually unifying.
Yes.
The resistance is to unite. And again, like we create what we breathe life into. So I
Hmm.
can sit here and say, okay, as a woman, I'm being stripped of everything. And I can say, I'm going to create the world we are all deserving of all together
Yeah,
as humans. I wouldn't just say it's a mindset. And I also wouldn't say it's not just like slapping a toxic positivity on it, like, buck up, everything's gonna be
absolutely.
okay. You create your reality. No, feel your feels. We can still feel our feels and be like crushed and like wish for a different thing. And energetically, we weren't ready yet. We have yet to create the balance between the divine feminine, divine
Yes.
masculine to accept and to be able to make way for a soul leader of
Mm,
humanity and of equality. We're not there yet. So,
yeah.
of course, we had to have one more stint of this wildly radical division to show the masses. We are in a massive awakening. We're literally in a new age of Aquarius as of yesterday with Pluto.
As of yesterday, yeah.
As of
Yeah.
yesterday. So it's here. On any degree, what Emily and I are saying, by any degree, if something isn't landing well for you, deep in your truth, in your knowing, you're being asked to unearth that, to excavate that by any degree of what you feel comfortable with. And to find the humans like Emily and I that are on the pathway and are learning, unlearning, educating others, excavating what has always been in us and in our lineage. That's what we're being asked and that's what we're following. So if anything lands for you, reach out to one of us. We'll help you out and see where you're trying to get to. Emily, what moves are you excited to be making as it relates to ethical introspection, green energy, sustainability, responsible tech? One of the things that really struck me is that if you Google professional woman, it will be a white woman. As we think about all that we've been talking about so far in this hour, what are you excited to be doing, making, seeing, creating, believing within that realm as we're heading into more of a conservative agenda?
Yeah. So thank you for that question because it's a really introspective question that I needed. When you sent it to me, I thought, oh, wow, this is something that I sometimes lose sight of. And I would say, for one, I am passionate about ethical AI and ethical tech. I feel algorithms of oppression. If you want to talk about one amazing book, I could list 100. I can give you some to put in the show notes if you want. I am obsessed with the women that are calling this out. There are some amazing women out there that are putting the hard work into reforming tech and making it more ethical towards women, towards people of color,
Cindy,
towards marginalized
Cindy
people.
Gallup, Sierra Gross.
Oh, absolutely.
We're
Absolutely.
both Cindy Gallup fans for sure. She's been on Women
Hmm.
Making Moves. It was awesome.
Yeah. She is a goddess.
Mind blown.
Mind blowing.
I,
Absolutely.
I'm an investor in Make Love Not Porn, and so it's like,
So am I. So am I. Yeah.
yes, okay, perfect. So I hope you get to meet her someday when she's back in the UK, or I'll go to New York one day and meet her. But okay, so what are you excited about?
I'm excited about the position that I am in as a consultant and as a person in tech, as a woman in tech, for being a committed voice for people who are marginalized and for not letting up. I know that I have the resilience. The devil works hard, but I work harder, and I am going to work harder. And I am going to make sure that till my dying day, I am making the world a better place. And I don't care how that happens. It can happen through tech. It can happen through sustainable energy. I'm extremely passionate about sustainable energy. It can happen through just having conversations like this, where we are opening up people's minds to the idea that there is a different way to
Yeah.
living.
What do you think about nuclear?
Oh, that's a good question. I am not opposed to nuclear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of the
No.
cleanest
Oh, 100%. It's one of the
and one of the
cleanest.
most regulated.
1000%. I think that we are in a scenario where trying to get people to adopt solar is very difficult. Trying to get people to adopt wind is very difficult. When I have conversations with people in the solar community, when I'm trying to explain to them why this is a good investment for them in businesses, we do commercial and we do residential. People sometimes are like, yeah, but like, I'm not going to see the, return on investment, or I'm not going to. There's a lack of understanding of how just dire it really is. But also, there's a need for us to look into systems like nuclear, I believe, because, like you said, it is the most regulated, but also it is something that we could do right now that is less controversial
Yeah.
than solar or than wind or anything else. I mean, when you have a president that literally said, people are getting cancer from wind. I fight this. I fight this on a daily basis of trying to explain to people, like, this is actually good. We're not going to drain the sun
Well,
of its energy. That was something that was said at one point during the thing. But nuclear energy is something that people are afraid of, and rightfully so. You can be afraid of something and still respect that it has good in it, right?
yeah, there was an amazing guest who is in Nigeria, and she's an advocate for nuclear energy. And it was such an educational episode on it's a massive investment up front, and then
100%.
the long term though sustainability is wild, both economically. She was saying how we know through regulations the waste. We've never regulated coal, any of the other resources of energy. We've never regulated the waste. Every mining of uranium worldwide, they know down to the person. There's a code,
Yeah.
like they know every, so, and of course, we've only heard about the three major disasters. And so,
And why has that been? Why have those disasters even happened? They happened because people cut corners. They happened because people didn't do their job the way that they should have. And they happened because people that did blow whistles were fired or were removed. And I think what's very difficult for people to do, and this is something that I try to do and I try to explain to my children, and I hope that they take this lesson. Something like nuclear is not inherently bad. It is the people and the ways that we allow people to abuse systems. And if you live in a society where your only obsession is making more money and becoming more wealthy, you're going to cut corners and you're
yeah.
going to put people's lives at risk, no matter what industry you're in. And when you have something like nuclear, it is maligned for a reason that is human, not because nuclear is bad.
And honestly, like, Guy is going to restore no matter what
Yeah.
we do. So
Mm.
some of this we have to watch unfold. And again, to your point, like us out here educating, have these conversations like, hey, did you know
Yeah.
that there are other ways to do it? And heading into an age where there's both oppressive algorithms and less appetite for actual truth. We're heading into that
Yeah.
as well. So it's all of that gets to be true at once. And we're just finding each other and we're having these conversations as we can. I want to go to a post that you made on LinkedIn recently. It was a repost from a TED conference from a speaker, and you responded, yes, this. The line for the men's bathroom is usually much shorter than the women's. And according to John Kerry, poor architecture is to blame. Can you tell me about this post and what resonated with you? And then based on what you share, I have a story for you to get your thoughts on.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know if you have ever read Invisible Women, a book that I love. I will say the author is not a huge fan of trans women, so that's kind of a hard part for this book. The book is great. The author has questionable views, so I will put that out there in advance. I am not suggesting that I agree with the author, but the idea of the book is that everything from how our cars are made to how the countertops in our kitchen are made, to how the bathrooms are made, women are the most likely to be the caregivers, right? They're the most likely to take the handicapped person or the children to the bathroom. And so our lines are longer going to the bathroom because we are the people that are taking up more space in the bathrooms, but our bathrooms are the exact same size or smaller than men. You know, men can go in, they can use the urinal or they can use the toilet and then they can walk out and they're very fast. But women, we have the bags that are holding the baby items, or we have the bags that are holding the items for our handicapped person or for ourselves. We can only use the bathroom sitting down. So why are there not enough toilets to go around? I always used to joke because I used to live for a very, very brief time in Alabama because I've lived overseas for about 20 years. And I moved to Alabama for about 8 months, very long 8 months of my life. And I used to drive to Georgia to visit my family. And there's a Buc-ee's that is right between where I lived and my parents' house in Leeds, Alabama, which is ironic because Leeds is also in England. So I used to joke because I'd moved from England to Alabama and then moved back. But there are thousands of bathrooms. And I remember walking in and I was like, this is what we need. There are multiple sinks. There are areas that you can sit down. There are areas that you can, deal with. When you have children, the stalls are big enough that you can bring your children in with you. And what resonated me with his post is like, it's not just about how big the bathroom is, right? It's not just about how tall our countertops are or how our seat belts are made for men's bodies. In the book, she talks about how the government changed the plowing of snow to make it to where they plowed areas where people were walking before they plowed the streets. And I'm leaving out tons of information. Definitely read the book if you want to read the whole story. But basically, hospitalizations for broken arms, for broken legs, for concussions, like people falling and slipping and hitting their heads, went down so drastically just from that one change of prioritizing people. And it's not just women, it's older people, it's people who are disabled. I mean, if you're using a wheelchair, you're not going to be able to get by. And so just by making that one small change and looking at not just white men or not just men in the society that we live in, they were able to impact so many people's lives. And if we just looked at our world and said, how does our marketing, how does our tech, how does our education, how does our everything that we do, our financial systems are not set up in a way. And I'm sad because I know that with the new administration that's coming in, and not to make everything political, but life is political, everything is political, sad to say. I know that we're going to have to work just as hard, if not harder, to overcome things that we've already overcome and
Mhm.
to change systems that need to be changed. But that, to me, we need to make the world focused on multiple people's identities, multiple people's realities. My consulting company is called Nanshi Nexus. Nanshi was the Sumerian goddess of social justice and compassion, right? And I picked her name to be a part of it because it is the basis of who I am as a person. I want to make sure that society is built in a way that is beneficial for everyone.
What if the baseline was differently abled people?
Yeah. Oh, because that's the thing is that I always say this to people, like, if you install ramps for handicapped personnel, everyone can use that ramp.
Mhm.
But if you install stairs, not everyone can use those stairs, right? If you install systems in your workplace and in your buildings that are handicapped accessible or that are accessible to other abilities, you are not losing anything. You're gaining so much. And also, so many disabilities are invisible. And people aren't going to necessarily come to you and say, actually, I could use help in the bathroom with handlebars on the walls, or I could use, a ramp because I have a bad back or because I have any sort of limitations. They're not going to come to you and say that necessarily because they might feel like they can't. And what's anybody going to do? But when we build societies to embrace the challenges that people of different abilities and neurodivergence and physical capabilities have, we are actually making the world nicer for those who are not suffering that. And I would like to say too, everyone is one accident or one freak moment away from being handicapped. None of us are perfect, and we will not be perfect for the rest of our lives. We will get older, we will break our hip, or we will break our leg, or we will maybe have a horrific car accident, or maybe nothing will ever happen to us. But none of us are immune to the need for different accommodations for those abilities. And so when we sit and we're like, oh, we don't want to have to deal with building the bathroom this way or whatever, what we're literally saying is we believe that we are immune. We believe that we are never going to have to deal with that scenario. And that it's actually more important to us that we make things more aesthetically pleasing for us in this weird aesthetic that we have in our minds that we've agreed upon than to actually say we're going to make the world accessible to everyone.
We're creating the world in which the baseline is the most underrepresented
Absolutely.
population in some way or shape or form. So that's what we're doing. The story we're going to tell you based on the bathrooms, and I want to get your thoughts on this because I know that a cishet man would never be able to do this. So I want your thoughts.
Mm.
So recently, I was at a concert in downtown Chicago, and during intermission, of course, the bathroom lines blew up. And
Mm.
my favorite band. And so I rushed down the stairs and I looked at the line of the women's restroom. I looked at the line of the men's restroom. A human, they were getting in line for the women's restroom as well. We looked at each other. We're like, do you want to do it? We went into the men's restroom and
Yeah.
looked straight ahead and we're like, don't look at anything. And like, there was actually, when we got in there, men were kind of going about their business. We were just like, get in, get out. And immediately when we got in, a man was like, oh, I'll help you, and like got us into a stall.
It's amazing.
And then when we got in there, like a worker was like, you can't be in here. We're like, we're just gonna go real quick, real quick. And then we raced out, never to be seen again, right? I share
Mm.
this story because that would never be acceptable. So like, was it
No,
okay? Was it okay that we did that? Because
absolutely. I think so.
but what if a man was uncomfortable because we were in there? I don't want to
So
anyone, do you know what I'm saying?
I do understand. I think the thing is that we built bathrooms incorrectly anyway, because gender's not binary, right?
Right.
So why do we have binary bathrooms? I live in Europe, right? I lived in Italy for about 7 years, and I've lived in England for about 5 now, 6 now almost. And we have unisex bathrooms.
Yeah.
You can go into the bathroom area and it's just a toilet in a room and you can
Like,
use it.
why
It
not?
makes more sense. You're never going to be able to make enough bathrooms for everybody because you
Mm.
can't make a trans bathroom and then this bathroom and that. But it makes more sense. For one, I think about the doors don't come down to the bottom and like there are gaps. When I went back to America to visit recently, I
You
was
were
like, oh
horrified.
gosh, I forgot how bad this is. People can literally see and they're like peeking in the little cracks. And I'm like, oh gosh, hello. I had a little girl actually stick her head under and go, is anybody in here? And I was like, yeah, honey, I'm in here, it doesn't bother me. I'm a mom, so I'm used to not going to the bathroom by myself. But I think that it's really weird. And it actually comes back to the trans idea of bathrooms, like people saying, oh, I don't want trans people in the bathroom. I don't understand what people think we're doing in the bathroom. Literally going to the bathroom.
That's what we were doing that night. We were like, okay,
Yeah.
we're in this women's line. We're never going to make it back in time to see the show. So let's
Mm,
just get in, get out, do our thing. I recognize the privilege as a woman to be able to do that because a man
yeah.
would be able to come
Because a
to a
man
woman's
could never
place.
do that.
Man never do that.
Absolutely.
So I recognize that privilege. And at the same time, I hope there was not a person in the bathroom that night that felt uncomfortable by my presence in the bathroom. And it's just a larger conversation. So thank you for sharing your perspective on that.
Yeah.
So we were in it
Yeah.
together. We looked at each other. Are we going to do this? Are we going to do this?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. We're in it. We're in it. We're in it.
Oh, I've done it before myself, not in such a grand scenario, but like I've been in the middle of nowhere. I had to pee so bad, sorry to say, but I was like driving. I've been driving for like 12 hours and I was in Italy and there wasn't a unisex bathroom, but it was that there was just a toilet in a room that was like a door. You locked it and it was male or female. And I'm like, well, toilets are the same. So it doesn't really matter. And I have to pee so bad. And there is somebody in the bathroom and they were taking forever. And I just went and used it. And when I came out, a man looked at me and he was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, I mean, it's a toilet. Like it's a toilet. At the end of the day, like
Yeah.
let's just make unisex toilets and call it a day and not
Yeah.
worry about it.
It goes back to like full circle beautifully. Go back to a thought that you are not taught. Could you
Yes.
use that restroom? Yeah, of course you can.
Mm.
So what is keeping us? So as we start to wind down, Emily, what would you share? What's the most important thing you want people, humans of the world to know about the work in which you're pursuing, but also how they can themselves start to think a thought they were not taught?
I talk about this a lot. Actually, that same conversation that I talked about earlier in the podcast, an episode about the lady that had asked, why did you change or why are you not like that? You don't know what you don't know until you learn what you know, right? So I am a huge advocate for education and for educating people. I homeschooled because I wanted my kids to have a worldly perspective that was bigger than any classroom I could give them. There are plenty of people that get great educations. I went to public school as a kid. I think our education system right now is horribly underfunded. I mean, we pay what, 10 times as much? I think it's at one point it was 7 billion a year for education and 700 billion a year for defense. So like could invest a little bit more on education there. But I think what's difficult for me is that we don't prioritize becoming uncomfortable. We don't prioritize getting in scenarios. It's very difficult to hear someone who is a woman of color tell me as a white woman, like, you don't understand my struggles. And it's not uncomfortable in that I don't want them to say that. It's uncomfortable that I need to learn that sometimes I'm wrong or sometimes I'm right, but I'm perpetuating something that I was taught. I was perpetuating so many stereotypes as a kid, as a young adult that I was given. And I didn't know until I started learning about other cultures. The Trouble with White Women by Kyla Schulin. It is a book that profoundly made me uncomfortable in a way that I needed to be uncomfortable. And I think that we are so averse to admitting that anything can change. We're so averse to admitting our role in what needs to change. It is difficult to sit and say, I need to be a different person. It's difficult to say, I am holding my own self back. And it's also difficult to hear someone say, your actions have hurt me. None of us want to hear that. But at the end of the day, if we don't have the open heart and the open mind to learn how to be a better person, we're going to continually hurt people around us. So I would say it's important that we grow. It's important that we continue education. I call myself a lifelong learner. I'm about to finish my master's. I have a capstone to do. And then I've got my master's, and I say that because I've moved internationally 7 times in 10 years, and it's been a journey. But even when I finish my master's, I will get another degree, or I will continue to read books, or I will continue to join on podcasts or in conferences, things that challenge me as a person and that make me grow. I also try to make it a point to not be the smartest person in any room. I try to surround myself with very educated individuals and to learn from them. I'm not always going to agree with them, but I have to confront the fact that there is going to be a day when I am that person in the room. And if I'm not educated, and if I'm teaching my kids, or I'm talking to people, when I'm educating people about DEI, when I'm talking to them about marketing practices that are inclusive, I always say to people when I'm training them, what you are doing is psychology. You are learning about people, what makes them tick and what makes them move, but you're also having a conversation with them. If you're not willing to have an honest conversation, a real, genuine conversation, I think that there are so many rainbow washing and this, that, and the other. If you're able to look past all of that and you're able to say, what do I not know and how can I learn that? And what people can I put in my life? Then you're able to move forward into being a stronger, better person.
Emily, where can we find your work?
At the moment, just LinkedIn. I have a new website that's coming up. I have a TikTok account called Factually instead of Actually, that I started a couple of months ago that I haven't done much with, that I need to get more on. But in general, yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best way to get a hold of me.
Closing remarks as we wrap up.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having this space, for being open to the thought process that someone like me, who's just a random person you met on the internet, might have something important to say. And I think that when we have these conversations and when you facilitate them, you are making magic happen. I actually wore my magical earrings for you. They're like hands holding a ball of magic. I don't know if you can see them, but I have like an obsession with goofy earrings, like funny earrings. So I always wear them, but I wore them just for you because I was like, this is magic. You are creating magic, but you are also harnessing something that we have in us that I wish that we would all just dig deep and find. And I appreciate every moment that I've had with you because it has been profound.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.